The door slammed shut and the sound echoed like a gunshot. Maren Cole stood frozen in the hallway of Thorn Enterprises, her entire body trembling as the noise reverberated through her bones. That sound. That final, crushing sound. It wasn't just a door closing. It was opportunity dying. It was hope being ripped away. It was the last thread of her carefully constructed plan unraveling in her hands. She couldn't breathe. The air in this place was too cold, too sterile, too heavy with the scent of power and money and wolves who belonged. Wolves who had packs. Wolves who had names that meant something. Wolves who weren't her. Maren's fingers clutched the strap of her canvas bag, so tightly her knuckles went white. The bag was practically empty. A broken pen. A crumpled receipt from the dollar store. A half-empty juice box she'd been saving for her son. That was it. That was everything she had left in this world besides the worn clothes on her back and the 4-year-old boy waiting for her somewhere down this endless, gleaming hallway. She had failed the interview. No, that wasn't quite right. She hadn't just failed. She had been destroyed. Torn apart. Dismissed like garbage. The woman who had interviewed her, Valeria, a high-ranking she-wolf with perfectly manicured nails and a smile that could cut glass, had looked at Maren's resume like it was contaminated. Like the paper itself might infect her with poverty. With rogue status. With the stench of someone who didn't belong. "We don't hire strays here, Ms. Cole," Valeria had said, her voice dripping with disdain. "This is Thorn Enterprises. We have standards. Perhaps you should try somewhere more suitable to your situation." Your situation. The words had landed like punches. Maren had wanted to scream that she had a degree. That she knew more about pack history and ancient archives than half the wolves in this building. That she had taught herself 3 languages while living in her car. That she had survived things that would have broken most people. But she hadn't screamed. She had sat there, trembling, and nodded. Because that's what rogues did. They took the abuse. They swallowed the humiliation. They survived. The fluorescent lights above hummed with a cold, mechanical buzz. Everything in this building was glass and steel and sharp edges. Polished marble floors stretched out before her, reflecting distorted images of herself back at her. She looked small, pale, ghostly. The kind of person people looked through, not at. Maren forced her legs to move, one foot in front of the other, even though every step felt like wading through concrete. Her cheap shoes, the ones she'd bought at a thrift store and tried to polish until they looked almost professional, squeaked softly against the marble. The sound made her want to disappear. She could feel eyes on her. Staff members passing by. Security guards stationed at their posts. All of them watching. All of them knowing. She was the rogue who had dared to apply here. The outsider who had thought she could walk into the den of the Silver Claw Pack and be treated like an equal. Stupid. So stupid. Her throat burned with unshed tears, but she wouldn't let them fall. Not here. Not where they could see. She had cried enough in her life. In the car when the eviction notice came. In the bathroom of the gas station when she realized she couldn't afford both food and the scent-masking herbs. In the dark of night when Toby asked her why they didn't have a home like other kids. She couldn't afford to cry now. She needed to collect her son and leave this place before someone decided she was loitering and called security. Toby. The thought of him sent a spike of fear through her chest so sharp it made her gasp. He was waiting for her. Down this hallway, around the corner, sitting on one of those cold metal benches in the visitors' area. She had left him there 45 minutes ago with his coloring book and his stuffed wolf, promising him that Mommy would be right back. Promising him that everything would be okay. Promising him that this time, this job, this chance, would save them. Another lie to add to the collection. Maren's vision blurred as she walked, her mind spinning with calculations she'd already done 100 times. 3 days until rent was due. $73 in her bank account. The motel manager had already warned her twice. One more late payment, and they'd be out. And then what? Where would they go? It was January. The nights were brutal. She couldn't keep Toby warm in the car. She couldn't protect him if they were on the streets. And the herbs. God, the herbs. She was almost out of the scent-masking mixture that kept Toby's true nature hidden. Without it, any wolf with a decent nose would smell what he was, would know what he carried in his blood, would realize that this small, innocent 4-year-old boy was something impossible, something dangerous, something that should not exist. The hallway seemed to stretch forever, the walls pressing in on both sides. Corporate art hung at perfect intervals, abstract pieces that probably cost more than Maren had earned in her entire life. Potted plants that were too perfect to be real. Everything in this place was designed to intimidate, to remind visitors of their place in the hierarchy, to make it clear who had power and who didn't. Maren didn't have power. She had never had power. She was a rogue Omega, the lowest of the low, a wolf without a pack in a world that worshipped pack structure above all else. She had been running for 5 years, hiding, surviving on scraps and hope and the desperate love she had for her son. But hope was running out. She turned the corner, her heart hammering against her ribs, and there he was. Toby, her little boy, sitting on the metal bench exactly where she'd left him, his legs swinging because they were too short to reach the floor. His dark curls fell across his forehead, and he was hunched over his coloring book, tongue poking out slightly in concentration as he carefully colored inside the lines of a wolf picture. The sight of him made something crack inside her chest. He was so small, so innocent, so beautiful. He was wearing his favorite hoodie, the blue one that was 2 sizes too big and had a hole in the sleeve she kept meaning to sew. His sneakers were scuffed and dirty, the laces mismatched because one had broken last week and she'd replaced it with whatever she could find. He looked up as she approached, and those eyes. God, those eyes. They were gold. Not brown, not amber, not hazel. Pure, liquid gold. The kind of eyes that should not exist on a child. The kind of eyes that marked him as something rare. Something powerful. Something that would get them both killed if the wrong wolves found out. Mommy. Toby's face lit up with a smile so genuine, so full of trust and love, that Maren wanted to sob. Did you get the job? The question hit her like a physical blow. She stopped a few feet away from him, her throat closing up, her carefully constructed mask threatening to crumble. She couldn't tell him the truth. She couldn't break his heart. Not again. Not this one, baby, she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. She forced a smile onto her face, even though it felt like her lips might crack. But that's okay. Better things are coming. I promise. Another lie. But what else could she do? He was 4 years old. He didn't need to know that they were 3 days away from being homeless. That she had no plan. That she was terrified out of her mind. Toby's smile dimmed slightly, but he nodded, trusting her completely. Okay, Mommy. Can we get chicken nuggets for dinner? Chicken nuggets. The cheapest thing on the dollar menu. The only thing she could afford if she wanted to also buy bread for tomorrow. Maybe, she said softly. We'll see. She reached for his hand, ready to gather his things and get them out of this building as quickly as possible. Ready to leave this place and never come back. Ready to figure out what the hell they were going to do next. But then she heard footsteps behind her. Sharp, expensive shoes against marble. And a voice. Cold. Disgusted. Familiar. You're still here. Maren turned slowly, her stomach dropping, to find Valeria standing there with 2 security guards flanking her. The she-wolf's perfectly made-up face twisted with irritation as she looked from Maren to Toby and back again. I told you to leave, Valeria said, her voice cutting through the hallway. This is a place of business, not a daycare. Keep that thing quiet and get out before I have you escorted. That thing. She called Toby a thing. Maren felt something hot and fierce surge through her chest. Protective rage. Maternal instinct. The kind of feeling that made even the weakest wolf bare their teeth. But she swallowed it down. Because she had no power here. No rights. No protection. If she fought back, if she made a scene, they would call the police. They would ask for identification. They would start asking questions. And questions led to discovery, and discovery led to death. So Maren did what she always did. She pulled Toby close, shielding him with her body, and nodded. "We're leaving." She reached down to grab Toby's coloring book from the bench, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip it. Toby pressed against her leg, sensing her distress, his small hand clutching her worn jeans. "It's okay, Mommy," he whispered, his voice so small and sweet it made her want to scream. "I'm not scared." But she was. She was terrified, because she didn't know what they were going to do, where they were going to go, how they were going to survive. And then, somewhere behind them, an elevator chimed. The sound was soft, mechanical, ordinary. But something about it made every wolf in the hallway go completely still. The air changed, thickened, became charged with something primal and electric. Maren felt the hair on the back of her neck stand up, her wolf instincts screaming at her to run, to hide, to get her child away from whatever was coming. The elevator doors slid open with a whisper of sound. And he stepped out. Subscribe to Cindy's Wolfheart stories. Because some stories don't just touch your heart. They claim it. Time didn't stop. That would be too simple, too clean. Instead, time fractured. Splintered into 1,000 sharp pieces that cut through the air and made everything feel wrong and heightened and terrifyingly real all at once. Maren couldn't move. Her body had locked up completely, every muscle frozen as her wolf instincts took over. And those instincts were screaming one word over and over, in a voice that came from somewhere ancient and primal and absolute. Alpha. Not just any alpha. The alpha. She didn't need to look to know who had stepped out of that elevator. She could feel it in the way the air pressure changed, in the way every wolf in the hallway suddenly found somewhere else to look, in the way Valeria's smug expression melted into something that looked almost like fear. The scent hit her next. Pine and winter frost and something darker, something that smelled like midnight and power and barely restrained violence. It rolled through the hallway like smoke, heavy and undeniable, wrapping around her throat and making it impossible to breathe. Maren's wolf whimpered inside her chest. Submission. Her instincts demanded submission. Demanded that she drop her eyes, bare her throat, acknowledge the superior predator that had just entered the space. But she couldn't. Because Toby was pressed against her leg, and she would die before she showed weakness in front of someone who might hurt him. So she stood there, trembling, her arms wrapped around her son, and finally forced herself to look. Ryder Thorne stood 15 feet away, surrounded by men in expensive suits who looked like they wanted to be anywhere but here. He was tall. Impossibly tall. The kind of height that made the ceiling seem lower, that made the hallway feel smaller. His suit was black and perfectly tailored, probably cost more than Maren had earned in 5 years, and it did nothing to soften the raw, predatory power that radiated from him like heat from a furnace. His face was all sharp angles and hard lines. Strong jaw. High cheekbones. A mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. Dark hair that was just slightly too long, pushed back from his forehead in a way that suggested he'd been running his hands through it. And his eyes. God, his eyes. They were scanning the hallway with the cold efficiency of someone who saw everything, cataloged everything, missed nothing. Gray. Storm gray. The kind of eyes that could strip away lies and excuses and leave you standing naked in front of judgment. Those were the eyes of the man who owned this building, who owned half the city, who ran the Silver Claw Pack with an iron fist and a reputation that made grown wolves flinch. Ryder Thorne, the Wolf King, the alpha who had built an empire from nothing and crushed anyone who got in his way. And Maren was standing in his hallway, a rogue omega with a secret she would die to protect. One of the executives next to him was talking, something about quarterly reports and market projections, his voice a nervous drone. Ryder wasn't listening. Marin could tell by the way his jaw tightened, by the way his fingers flexed slightly at his sides. He looked tired. Not physically tired, but soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that came from carrying too much weight for too long. He took a step forward, and Marin's body instinctively tried to back up, but the wall was right behind her. Trapped. She was trapped between the Alpha and the exit, with her son pressed against her and nowhere to run. Mr. Thorne, Valeria's voice cut through the tension, sharp and eager. I apologize for the disturbance. I was just escorting this individual out of the building. Ryder's eyes flicked to Valeria for half a second, dismissive and cold, before moving past her entirely. He clearly had no interest in whatever explanation she was offering. His gaze swept the hallway again, categorizing, assessing, and then he stopped. Completely and utterly stopped. His entire body went rigid, every muscle locking into place like someone had thrown a switch. His nostrils flared slightly, his head tilting just a fraction to the side. And then his eyes, those storm gray eyes, dropped down to the small boy pressed against Marin's leg. Toby had been hiding behind her, his face buried in her jeans, but something about the sudden silence made him curious. Kids were like that. They sensed when something important was happening, even when they didn't understand what it was. He poked his head around Marin's hip, his dark curls bouncing slightly, and looked up at the tall man in the expensive suit. And Ryder Thorne froze. Not just stopped. Froze. Like his entire nervous system had short-circuited. Like someone had reached into his chest and squeezed his heart until it forgot how to beat. Marin watched in absolute terror as all the color drained from the Alpha's face. His briefcase slipped from his fingers and hit the marble floor with a crash that made everyone in the hallway jump. Papers scattered across the polished surface, but Ryder didn't even glance down. He was staring at Toby. Just staring. His lips had parted slightly, and his breathing had gone shallow and rapid, his chest rising and falling like he'd just run a marathon. Sir, one of the executives reached out tentatively. Are you? Ryder held up one hand, a sharp gesture that demanded silence. The executive shut his mouth immediately and took a step back. The Alpha's eyes were still locked on Toby, scanning his face, his features, the curve of his cheek, the shape of his nose. And then Toby looked up, his face tilting back to see the tall man better, and their eyes met. Gold to gray. The sound that came from Ryder's throat wasn't quite human. It was something between a gasp and a growl, raw and broken, and filled with so much emotion that Marin felt it in her bones. Because Toby's eyes weren't brown anymore. In the fluorescent light of the hallway, without the shadows to hide them, they were pure, liquid gold. Bright and impossible and absolutely unmistakable. The same gold that was now bleeding into Ryder Thorne's gray eyes, transforming them, lighting them up from the inside like someone had set fire to smoke. Alpha gold. The rarest eye color among wolves. The mark of the strongest bloodlines. The kind of trait that only appeared in the most powerful families, passed down through generations of carefully maintained breeding. And this 4-year-old boy, standing in a worn hoodie with mismatched shoelaces, had them. Marin's heart stopped. This was it. This was the moment she had been running from for 5 years. The moment when someone would see Toby, really see him, and understand what he was. What he represented. She grabbed Toby's shoulder, ready to run, ready to fight, ready to do whatever it took to protect him. But Ryder wasn't moving. He was still staring, his face cycling through expressions so fast she could barely track them. Shock. Disbelief. Recognition. And then something else. Something that looked almost like pain. His hand came up slowly, trembling, as if he wanted to reach out but didn't trust himself to move. His lips formed words, but no sound came out at first. When his voice finally emerged, it was barely a whisper, rough and broken. What is your name? He wasn't talking to Marin. He was talking to Toby. Toby, sweet and innocent and completely unaware of the hurricane that was forming around him, smiled. I'm Toby. I'm 4 years old. 4 years old. Marin watched as those words hit Ryder like bullets. His jaw clenched, and his eyes closed for just a second, as if he was doing rapid calculations in his head. When his eyes opened again, they were blazing with that alpha gold, bright and fierce and absolutely focused. Who is his father? Ryder's voice was different now. Harder. Colder. Each word carefully controlled, as if he was barely holding himself together. The question was directed at Marin, and when his eyes finally shifted to her face, she felt the full weight of his attention for the first time. It was like being pinned by a spotlight. Like having every secret, every lie, every desperate choice she'd ever made laid bare under that gaze. She couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up completely. Her wolf was howling inside her, a mess of fear and confusion, and something else she didn't want to name. Answer me. Not a request. A command. The kind of command that made lesser wolves drop to their knees. The kind of command that carried the full force of alpha authority behind it. But Marin had spent 5 years learning how to resist that authority. 5 years building walls around herself, around her son, around the truth that would destroy them both if it ever came out. She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze even though every instinct screamed at her to look away. That's none of your business. Wrong answer. Ryder moved. Fast. Faster than any human could move. 1 second he was 15 feet away, and the next he was right in front of her, so close she could see the flecks of silver in his gold eyes, so close she could feel the heat radiating off his body. He didn't touch her. Didn't threaten her. But his presence alone was overwhelming, a wall of power and dominance that made her knees want to buckle. That child, he said, his voice low and dangerous, has my eyes. For words. That's all it took. For words to shatter the carefully constructed lie Marin had been living for 5 years. She shook her head, instinctive denial, even though they both knew it was pointless. You're wrong. I am never wrong about bloodlines. His voice dropped even lower, almost a growl now. That is alpha gold. Royal gold. The Thorn bloodline gold. And there is only one way a rogue Omega's son ends up with those eyes. The hallway had gone completely silent. Everyone was staring now, executives and security guards and administrative staff who had suddenly found reasons to linger. All of them watching this confrontation play out like it was a movie. Valeria was the first to break the silence, her voice sharp with outrage. Mr. Thorne, this woman is just a rogue. A beggar. She's probably lying, trying to scam you for money. If you'd like, I can have security remove. If you speak one more word, Ryder said, not even looking at her, I will have you removed from this building permanently. Do you understand? Valeria's mouth snapped shut, her face going white. Ryder's attention returned to Marin, and this time there was something different in his eyes. Not anger. Not accusation. Something that looked almost like desperation. 5 years ago, he said quietly, there was a masquerade. A ceremony during the eclipse. I met someone there. A woman with a silver mask and dark hair and a scent like rain and wildflowers. She disappeared before dawn, and I have been looking for her ever since. Marin felt the blood drain from her face. No, he couldn't know. He couldn't remember. She had been so careful. She had worn the mask, kept her identity hidden, run before he could see her face in the daylight. I searched everywhere, Ryder continued, his voice getting rougher. Every pack. Every territory. Every database. And now you show up in my building with a 4-year-old son who has my eyes, and you expect me to believe it's a coincidence. He leaned in closer, and Marin could smell him now, really smell him. That pine and winter frost scent that had haunted her dreams for 5 years. The scent she had tried so hard to forget. Tell me I'm wrong, he whispered, and there was something broken in his voice. Something vulnerable. Tell me that child isn't mine, and I'll let you walk out of here. But if you lie to me, If you deny me my son, I will tear this city apart until I find the truth. Maren was shaking. Her entire body was shaking. Because she had two choices. She could lie, could grab Toby and run and hope they made it out of the building before Ryder stopped them. Or she could tell the truth. The truth that would change everything. The truth that would bind them to this man, to this pack, to this life she had been running from. Toby tugged on her jeans, his small voice cutting through the tension. "Mommy? Is the tall man angry?" And that's when it happened. Ryder's eyes dropped back to Toby, and his entire expression crumbled. The hard, dangerous alpha melted away, replaced by something raw and unguarded and heartbreaking. He dropped to one knee. Right there on the marble floor of his own building, in front of all his employees, the alpha of the Silver Claw pack knelt before a 4-year-old boy. "I'm not angry," he said softly, his voice gentle in a way Maren had never heard from an alpha. "I'm just surprised. In a good way." Toby tilted his head, studying him with the serious intensity only children could manage. "You smell like the forest." Ryder's breath caught. Yeah, like the trees we saw on TV." Toby paused, then added helpfully, "Mommy says forests are where wolves belong." Something flickered across Ryder's face, too fast for Maren to read. He glanced up at her, and in that moment, she saw everything. The questions. The accusations. The desperate, aching need for answers. But most of all, she saw recognition. He knew. He knew Toby was his. He knew she was the woman from that night. He knew everything. And he wasn't walking away. Maren's mind was a war zone. Every instinct she had spent 5 years building, every defensive wall, every carefully constructed lie, was crumbling under the weight of Ryder Thorne's gaze. And the worst part, the absolutely terrifying part, was that some broken piece of her wanted to crumble. Wanted to stop running. Wanted to finally tell someone the truth. But truth was dangerous. Truth got people killed. She couldn't breathe. The hallway felt like it was closing in, the fluorescent lights too bright, the air too thick. Her wolf was going crazy inside her chest, torn between the primal urge to submit to the alpha and kneeling in front of her son, and the maternal instinct to grab Toby and run as far and as fast as she could. Ryder was still on his knee, still looking at Toby with an expression that made Maren's heart hurt. Like he was seeing something precious and fragile and completely unexpected. Like he was afraid to blink in case the boy disappeared. "How old did you say you were?" Ryder asked, his voice still impossibly gentle. "4," Toby answered proudly, holding up 4 fingers. "My birthday was in September. Mommy made me cupcakes." September. Maren watched the calculation happen in real time across Ryder's face. His jaw tightened, and those gold eyes flickered with something that looked like anger and grief all tangled together. 9 months after the eclipse ceremony. 9 months after that one impossible night. "Cupcakes sound nice," Ryder said carefully, and Maren could hear the control in his voice. The way he was holding himself together by sheer force of will. "What flavor?" "Chocolate." "But we didn't have candles because..." Toby stopped, glancing up at Maren with sudden uncertainty, as if he'd said something wrong. "Because they couldn't afford candles." Because Maren had made those cupcakes from a box mix she'd bought with coins she'd collected from couch cushions and car floor mats. Because they'd been living in a motel that charged by the week and ate their birthday dinner sitting on the bed because there was no table. Ryder's hands clenched into fists against his thighs. For a moment, Maren thought he might break. Might unleash the rage she could feel simmering underneath his controlled exterior. But when he spoke again, his voice was steady. "I bet they were still delicious." Toby grinned. "They were the best cupcakes ever." And that smile, that innocent, trusting smile hit Ryder like a physical blow. Maren could see it in the way his shoulders tensed, in the way his throat worked as he swallowed hard. The executives who had been with him in the elevator were still standing there, frozen, clearly unsure what to do. Valeria had backed up several steps, her face pale, her earlier confidence completely shattered. The security guards looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. Everyone knew they were witnessing something significant. Something that would change the hierarchy of this pack forever. Ryder stood slowly, his movements careful and deliberate, and finally turned his full attention to Maren. The gentleness he'd shown Toby was gone, replaced by something harder. More demanding. "We need to talk," he said. "Not a request. A statement. Privately." Maren's first instinct was to refuse. To grab Toby and push past him and run. But she was trapped. She had no money, no car, nowhere to go. And even if she did run, he would find her. She could see it in his eyes. He wasn't going to let them disappear again. "I have nothing to say to you," she managed, her voice shaking despite her best efforts to sound strong. "Then you can listen." Ryder gestured toward the elevator. "My office." "Now." "No." The word came out firmer than she'd expected. "I'm not going anywhere with you." "I'm not." "Mommy?" Toby tugged on her jeans again, his small face creased with worry. "Are you scared?" "Don't be scared. The tall man seems nice." Nice. If only Toby knew. If only he understood what alpha males were capable of. How they controlled everything and everyone. How they took what they wanted and crushed anyone who got in their way. But Toby didn't know. He was 4. He still believed in good guys and happy endings and mothers who could protect him from anything. Ryder's expression softened again when he looked at Toby. "I am nice," he said quietly. "And I promise your mom is safe. I just want to talk to her." "Maybe you could." He hesitated, clearly out of his depth. "Do you like hot chocolate?" Toby's eyes went wide. "Really? With marshmallows?" "With as many marshmallows as you want." Maren wanted to scream. He was bribing her son. Using the one thing no 4-year-old could resist. And it was working. She could see it in the way Toby's face lit up, in the way his earlier anxiety melted away. "Can I, Mommy? Please?" She was trapped. Completely and utterly trapped. If she refused, she'd look like the bad guy. If she agreed, she'd be walking into the lion's den. But maybe if she talked to him, explained why she'd run, made him understand that this was impossible, he'd let them go. Maybe he'd see that Toby was better off without the complications of pack politics and power struggles. Maybe. "Fine," she said, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. "But Toby stays with me." "Of course." Ryder gestured toward the elevator again, and this time it wasn't a command. It was an invitation. "After you." Maren picked up Toby's coloring book and his stuffed wolf from the bench, her hands still shaking. Toby grabbed her hand, completely unaware of the tension crackling through the air, chattering excitedly about marshmallows. As they walked toward the elevator, Ryder turned to address the frozen crowd of employees. His voice dropped into that alpha command register, the one that made people's spines straighten automatically. "This floor is closed for the rest of the day. Everyone out. Now." They scattered. Within 30 seconds, the hallway was empty except for Ryder, Maren, Toby, and the heavy weight of 5 years of secrets. The elevator doors opened, and Maren stepped inside, pulling Toby with her. The space was large and luxurious, all polished wood and brass fixtures. It smelled like Ryder, that pine and winter frost scent that made her wolf whine with recognition. Ryder stepped in behind them and pressed a button for the top floor. The penthouse. His private office. The doors slid shut and they were alone. The elevator began to rise and in the silence, Maren's mind drifted back. Back to 5 years ago. Back to the night that had changed everything. She hadn't meant to go to the masquerade. She had been living on the outskirts of the city, sleeping in her car, working 3 part-time jobs that paid under the table because no legitimate employer would hire a rogue. She'd been 22, exhausted, and completely alone. The eclipse ceremony was a sacred event, open to all wolves regardless of pack affiliation. It happened once every 5 years, at a night when the boundaries between packs dissolved and everyone gathered to honor the moon and their shared heritage. Maren had gone because she was desperate. Because she needed to feel, just for one night, like she belonged somewhere. Like she was part of something bigger than her own survival. The masquerade had been beautiful. Hundreds of wolves in elaborate masks, dancing under the eclipse moon. Music and laughter and the kind of joy Maren had almost forgotten existed. And then she'd seen him. He'd been wearing a black wolf mask, standing apart from the crowd, watching the dancers with an expression that looked almost lonely despite the power that radiated from him. She'd known immediately that he was an alpha. You couldn't miss it. The way people moved around him, giving him space. The way even other alphas deferred to him. She should have stayed away. Should have avoided him like the dangerous predator he was. But something had pulled her toward him. Some invisible thread that made her wolf sit up and take notice in a way she'd never experienced before. He turned as she approached, those gray eyes visible through the mask, and for a moment, neither of them had moved. Just stood there, staring at each other while the world continued to spin around them. "You smell like rain," he'd said, his voice low and rough. "And wildflowers." She hadn't known what to say to that. Hadn't known how to respond to the intensity in his gaze. "Dance with me," he'd said, and it hadn't been a command. It had been a plea. So she danced with him. One dance that had turned into two, then three, then the entire night. They hadn't talked much. Hadn't exchanged names or pack affiliations or any of the normal information wolves shared. They'd just existed in that moment, suspended in time under the eclipse moon. And when the ceremonies had ended, when the crowd had started to disperse into the sacred grove for the traditional hunts and matings, he'd taken her hand. "Come with me," he'd whispered. "Please." She should have said no. Should have walked away. But there had been something in his eyes, something that looked like the same desperate loneliness she carried, and she'd followed him. They'd gone to a private cabin on the edge of the grounds. He'd been gentle despite his obvious power, careful with her in a way that made her chest ache. And when they'd finally come together, when the mate bond had snapped into place with a force that had stolen her breath, she'd felt complete for the first time in her entire life. Fated mates. The rarest, most sacred bond in wolf culture. The kind of connection that was supposed to last forever. But Maren had known it couldn't last. Because she was a rogue, and he was clearly someone important. Because the mask would come off eventually, and he would see her for what she really was. Because fairy tales didn't happen to girls like her. So before dawn, while he'd been sleeping, she'd run. She'd taken nothing but her clothes and her shame. Had disappeared into the city and tried to forget. Tried to convince herself it had been a beautiful dream and nothing more. And then 6 weeks later, she'd realized she was pregnant. The elevator chimed, pulling Maren back to the present. The doors opened onto a massive penthouse office that looked more like a luxury apartment than a workspace. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. Leather furniture. A desk that probably cost more than most cars. Artwork that belonged in museums. Toby gasped. "Whoa. This is like a castle." Ryder smiled, a small, genuine expression that transformed his entire face. "Kind of feels like one sometimes." He moved to a small kitchen area off to the side. "Let me get you that hot chocolate." While Ryder was distracted, Maren stood frozen in the center of the room, her mind racing. She needed a plan. An exit strategy. Something. But every time she tried to think, she just kept seeing that night 5 years ago. Kept remembering the way he'd held her. The way he'd whispered her name like a prayer even though he hadn't known it. Wait. Her name. Maren's blood went cold. He hadn't known her name that night. She'd never told him. They'd been anonymous to each other, just two wolves seeking connection in the darkness. But he'd called her something. What had he called her? Moonflower. Ryder's voice came from behind her, quiet and rough. He was standing there with a mug of hot chocolate, reading her thoughts on her face. "I called you Moonflower. Because you smelled like wildflowers, and we met under the eclipse moon." The memory crashed over her. Yes, he'd called her that. Over and over, in moments of tenderness and passion. Moonflower. I searched for you, he continued, his voice thick with emotion. For 5 years, I searched. Every pack database. Every registry. I had investigators looking for a woman who matched your description, your scent, anything. I thought maybe you died. Or that I'd imagined the whole thing. But the mate bond, his voice cracked. The bond was still there. Pulling at me. Making it impossible to move on. Marin's throat was so tight she could barely breathe. You shouldn't have looked for me. Why? The word came out harsh. Demanding. Why did you run? Why did you hide my son from me? Because. The words exploded out of her. 5 years of fear and pain and desperation. Because I'm nothing. I'm a rogue writer. I have no pack, no family, no name that matters. Do you know what would have happened if I'd shown up pregnant, claiming to be your fated mate? Your pack would have destroyed me. They would have said I was lying, that I was trying to trap you, that the baby wasn't yours. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Tears were streaming down her face now, and she didn't care. I've seen it happen. I've seen what packs do to rogues who dare to reach above their station. My mother was killed for less. She was executed by her own pack when they found out she was pregnant with an alpha's child, and he denied it. I was 8 years old, and I watched them tear her apart. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Marin had never told anyone that. Had kept that trauma buried so deep she sometimes convinced herself it hadn't happened. Ryder's face had gone completely white. Marin, don't. She held up a shaking hand. Don't tell me it would have been different. Don't tell me your pack would have accepted me. Because we both know that's a lie. Toby had gone quiet on the couch, sensing the heavy emotions even if he didn't understand them. He was clutching his hot chocolate, his golden eyes wide and worried. Ryder set down his own mug with carefully controlled movements. When he spoke again, his voice was low and intense. You're right, he said, and the admission clearly cost him. 5 years ago, you're right. My pack would have fought it. They would have demanded proof. They would have made your life hell. He took a step closer. But I wouldn't have let them. I would have stood with you. I would have claimed you and protected you and made damn sure everyone knew you were mine. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. His eyes were blazing now, that alpha gold burning bright. Do you know what it's been like? 5 years of feeling half alive. 5 years of knowing my mate was out there somewhere and I couldn't find her. 5 years of, his voice broke. And all this time, you've been here. In my city. Raising my son. Starving. Struggling. Scared. He gestured toward her worn clothes, her too-thin frame, the dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. That's on me, he said roughly. That's my failure. Because I should have found you sooner. Should have protected you. Should have made sure my mate and my child never wanted for anything. Marin shook her head, unable to process what he was saying. It's not your responsibility. Yes, it is. The words came out in a growl. You're my fated mate. That boy is my son. My blood. My heir. Taking care of you isn't a responsibility, it's a privilege I've been denied for 5 years. He moved closer, and Marin's back hit the window. She was trapped again, but this time it felt different. Less threatening. More intense. I'm not letting you go again, Ryder said quietly, his face inches from hers. I can't. The bond won't let me. My wolf won't let me. And, honestly, I don't want to. His scent surrounded her, pine and winter frost, and something that called to every broken, lonely part of her soul. The mate bond thrummed between them, 5 years of denial making it stronger, more desperate. What do you want from me? She whispered. Everything. His hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. I want you to stop running. I want you to let me take care of you. I want to get to know my son. He paused, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. I want a chance to be what you needed 5 years ago. Marin closed her eyes, fighting against the part of her that wanted to believe him. It's not that simple. It is, though. It's exactly that simple. His forehead pressed against hers. Stay. Let me protect you. Let me show you what it means to be cherished instead of chased. And God help her, she wanted to. Wanted to collapse into his arms and let someone else be strong for once. Wanted to give Toby the life he deserved. Wanted to stop being afraid. But fear was a hard habit to break. Your pack, she started, will accept you because I say so. Because you're my mate, and anyone who challenges that will answer to me. His voice dropped to something almost like a purr. And if they need more convincing, they can look at Toby's eyes and know exactly whose bloodline runs through his veins. A small voice interrupted them. Mommy? Are you and the tall man friends now? They both turned to see Toby watching them with curious eyes, his hot chocolate mustache making him look impossibly young and innocent. Ryder's expression softened immediately. He pulled back from Marin and went to kneel in front of Toby again, bringing himself down to the boy's eye level. I'd like to be more than friends, he said gently. If that's okay with you. Toby tilted his head. Like family? The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Ryder's breath caught, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Yeah, bud. Like family. Toby seemed to consider this seriously. Then he looked up at Marin. Can we, Mommy? Can we have a family? And there it was. The question that would change everything. The choice that would determine the rest of their lives. Marin looked at her son's hopeful face, at Ryder's desperate expression, at the luxury and safety and belonging that was being offered. And she realized something. She'd been running for 5 years, but she'd never actually been free. She'd been a prisoner of her own fear, trapped by her past, unable to give Toby the life he deserved. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to take a leap of faith. The word hung in Marin's throat, too terrified to come out. Yes. No. Maybe. Every option felt like stepping off a cliff into darkness, not knowing if she'd fall or fly. But before she could answer, before she could make a decision that would change everything, the lights in the penthouse flickered. Once. Twice. Then steadied. Ryder's head snapped up, his entire body going rigid. His nostrils flared, and Marin watched as his eyes shifted fully to that blazing alpha gold. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the sudden tension that flooded the room, in the way the air pressure seemed to change. Stay here, Ryder commanded, his voice dropping into that alpha register that demanded obedience. He was already moving toward the door, pulling out his phone. But he didn't make it 3 steps before the windows exploded inward. Not shattered. Exploded. As if something with immense force had hit them from the outside. Glass rained down in a glittering storm, and Marin's instincts took over. She lunged for Toby, covering his small body with hers, sheltering him from the debris. The sound was deafening. Toby screamed, his small hands clutching at her shirt. Marin felt glass slice across her shoulder, hot pain blooming, but she didn't care. Only Toby mattered. Only protecting him. When the chaos settled, when the last shard of glass tinkled against the marble floor, Marin looked up. And her blood turned to ice. Standing in the destroyed window frame, backlit by the gray afternoon sky, was a woman. Not just any woman. She was ancient. Her skin was weathered like old leather, marked with ritual scars that formed patterns Marin didn't recognize. Her eyes were completely white, no iris, no pupil, just endless white that seemed to glow with their own internal light. And she was floating. Actually floating, suspended 3 feet off the ground, her tattered robes whipping around her in a wind that didn't exist. What the hell? Ryder snarled, positioning himself between the intruder and Marin and Toby. His body was already shifting, muscles rippling, bones beginning to crack and reform as he prepared to change. But the old woman raised one gnarled hand and Ryder froze. Completely froze. His body locked mid-transformation, half human, half wolf, trapped in that agonizing in-between state. His eyes went wide with shock and pain. Stop! Marin screamed, trying to get up, but the woman's other hand gestured toward her, and suddenly Marin couldn't move either. It was like invisible chains had wrapped around her entire body, holding her in place. The only one who could still move was Toby. The old woman's white eyes fixed on the small boy, and her expression transformed. The harsh, terrifying mask melted away, replaced by something that looked almost like reverence. Like awe. "There you are," she whispered, her voice like whined through dry leaves. "Finally. After all these centuries. There you are." Toby was trembling, pressed against Marin, but something made him look up. Made him meet those terrible white eyes. And when he did, his own eyes flared with light. Pure golden light that seemed to pour from him like liquid sunshine. The old woman descended slowly, her feet finally touching the glass-strewn floor. She moved with a grace that belied her apparent age, gliding across the room until she stood before Toby. "Do you know what you are, child?" she asked softly. Toby shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "You are the twice-born. The child of two bloodlines that should never have mixed. Alpha and Oracle. Power and prophecy." Her white eyes shifted to Marin, and there was something knowing in her expression. "You thought you were just a rogue, didn't you? Just a nameless Omega running from her past." Marin's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might burst. "I don't understand." "Your mother," the old woman interrupted, "was not killed because she carried an Alpha's child. She was executed because she was an Oracle, the last of the true seers. And when her pack discovered what she was, what power ran through her blood, they killed her before she could pass that gift to you." The words hit Marin like physical blows. No, that wasn't right. Her mother had been just a low-ranking wolf. A nobody. She'd been killed because she'd gotten pregnant out of wedlock, because the Alpha had denied the child was his. That's what Marin had been told. That's what she'd believed for 23 years. "They lied to you," the old woman said, reading her thoughts on her face. "To protect themselves. Because oracles see truth, and truth is dangerous to those who trade in lies and power." Her attention returned to Toby. "But the gift didn't die with your mother. It went dormant. Waiting. And now it has awakened in this child, mixed with the strongest Alpha bloodline in 3 generations." Ryder made a strangled sound, still frozen, still trapped in his partial transformation. The old woman glanced at him almost apologetically. "Forgive me, Alpha, but this conversation is not for you. Not yet." She looked back at Toby, and her expression softened even further. "Do you dream, little one? Do you see things that haven't happened yet?" Toby nodded slowly, his voice small and scared. "Sometimes. I dream about a big white wolf. And fires. And people screaming. And—" He hesitated, looking up at Marin. "And Mommy gets hurt." Marin's breath caught. Toby had been having nightmares for months. She'd thought they were just normal childhood fears, stress from their unstable life. But what if they were something more? "The dreams are warnings," the old woman said gently. "Your gift is trying to protect those you love. But it is untrained, wild, dangerous. Without guidance, without control, the visions will consume you. Drive you mad like they did so many oracles before you." "Who are you?" Marin demanded, finding her voice even though her body was still frozen. "What do you want?" The old woman straightened, and suddenly she didn't look quite so ancient anymore. Power rolled off her in waves, making the air shimmer. "I am Cassandra, the first oracle, the one who saw the rise and fall of the original packs. I have been walking this world for 3,000 years, watching, waiting for the prophesied child." "Prophesied?" Marin's voice cracked. Cassandra turned to the destroyed window, looking out over the city. When she spoke, her voice took on a rhythmic quality, like she was reciting something ancient and sacred. "When the moon bleeds red and the wolf runs gold, when oracle blood and alpha power hold, a child will be born of 2 forbidden lines, to heal the broken or watch the world decline. The twice-born will stand at the center of war, between those who crave peace and those who want more. With sight to see futures and power to command, The fate of all wolves rests in this child's hand. The words echoed through the penthouse, heavy with the weight of centuries. Maren felt like she couldn't breathe. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. There are those, Cassandra continued, who know of this prophecy, who have been waiting, watching, searching for the child. Some believe the Twiceborn will unite all wolves under one peaceful banner. Others believe he will destroy the pack system entirely and return wolves to their wild, chaotic roots. She turned back to face them, her white eyes grave. And there are those who believe the only way to prevent either outcome is to kill the child before he comes into his full power. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Maren's protective instincts roared to life, so strong she actually managed to move despite the magical chains holding her. She lunged forward, covering Toby completely with her body. "Over my dead body," she snarled, and her voice carried the edge of a wolf's growl. "You want him, you go through me." Cassandra smiled, and it was warm and sad all at once. "I am not your enemy, little oracle. I am here to warn you, to prepare you. Because the moment I found the child, others will have felt it too. The moment his power flared when he looked at his father, when the bond between all three of you activated, it sent out a signal like a beacon. Every sensitive wolf within 500 miles felt it." Ryder made another strangled sound, his eyes blazing with fury and fear. He was fighting the magical hold with everything he had, muscles straining, tendons standing out like cords. "Release him," Maren demanded. "If you're here to help, release him." Cassandra studied Ryder for a long moment, then nodded. With a gesture, she released whatever power had been holding him frozen. Ryder immediately completed his transformation, bones cracking back into place, his body returning to fully human. He stumbled, catching himself against a desk, breathing hard. The moment he had control of his limbs, he was moving, crossing the room in 3 strides, positioning himself between Cassandra and his family. His family. The word resonated through Maren's chest with painful clarity. "You have 5 seconds to explain why I shouldn't tear you apart," Ryder growled, his voice rough from the forced transformation. "Because I can teach your son to control his gift," Cassandra said simply. "Because I can show him how to shield his mind so the visions don't destroy him. Because I am the only one alive who understands what he is and what he will become." She paused. "And because in approximately 3 hours, the Shadowfang pack will arrive in this city with orders to kill the Twiceborn before he reaches his 5th birthday." The name hit Maren like a punch. Shadowfang. One of the oldest, most traditional packs in North America. Known for their rigid adherence to ancient laws and their absolute intolerance for anything that disrupted the natural order. "How do you know this?" Ryder demanded. "Because I saw it. 17 years ago, I saw this moment. This choice. This crossroads." Cassandra's white eyes found Maren's. "I saw you, running through fire with your son in your arms. I saw you, Alpha, torn between protecting your family and protecting your pack. I saw death and destruction and chaos. And?" Ryder's voice was sharp as broken glass. "And I saw 2 possible futures. In one, you run. You take the child and the mother and you hide. The Shadowfang pack destroys this city looking for you. Thousands die. The pack wars begin again, worse than before. Blood soaks the streets for decades." She paused, letting that horrific image sink in. "In the other future, you stand and fight. You claim your mate publicly. You acknowledge your son as your heir. You make it clear that anyone who threatens the Twiceborn threatens the entire Silverclaw pack. And you take them to the sacred grounds." "What sacred grounds?" Maren asked. Cassandra's expression grew distant, reverent. "There is a place, deep in the northern forests, where the first packs were born, where the original wolves received their gifts from the moon herself. It is a place of immense power, protected by ancient magic. If you can reach it, if you can perform the claiming ceremony there, the child will be bound to both bloodlines fully. Protected. Recognized by the old magic itself. And if we can't reach it? Ryder asked quietly. Then the second future never happens. And I saw what comes instead. Cassandra's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I saw the child's funeral. I saw the mother broken beyond repair. I saw the Alpha drowning in grief and rage, tearing apart anyone who came near. I saw the end of the Silver Claw Pack and the beginning of a war that would consume everything. Silence fell over the destroyed penthouse. Outside, the city continued its normal rhythm, completely unaware that the fate of all wolves was being decided in this moment. Toby spoke up, his small voice cutting through the heavy atmosphere. I don't want people to die because of me. Everyone turned to look at him. This small, innocent 4-year-old boy who apparently carried the weight of prophecy on his shoulders. Marin's heart shattered. He shouldn't have to think about things like this. Shouldn't have to worry about death and war and destiny. He should be thinking about toys and cartoons and what he wanted for his next birthday. Ryder knelt down in front of Toby, and Marin saw something in his face she'd never seen in an alpha before. Vulnerability. Fear. Love so intense it was almost painful to witness. No one is going to die, Ryder said firmly. And no one is going to hurt you. I promise. Can you keep that promise? Cassandra asked softly. Can you protect him from an entire pack of trained warriors? From assassins who will stop at nothing? From those who fear what he represents? Ryder stood, and when he spoke, his voice carried absolute conviction. Yes, because I'm not facing them alone. I have my pack, my resources, my territory. His hand found Marin's, gripping it tight. And I have his mother, who has kept him safe for 5 years against impossible odds. Something warm bloomed in Marin's chest. He wasn't just claiming Toby. He was claiming her, acknowledging her strength, her sacrifice, the years she'd spent protecting their son when he hadn't even known he existed. The sacred grounds are 3 days' journey north, Cassandra said, through territories that are not all friendly. You'll need to move fast, move smart, and move together. The claiming ceremony can only be performed under the new moon, and that's in 4 days. 4 days. Ryder's jaw clenched. To get there, perform the ceremony, and establish protection for my family. And to convince your pack to accept a rogue oracle as their Luna, Cassandra added. Not all of them will be pleased. Some will see it as a weakness. A betrayal of tradition. Marin felt her stomach drop. Luna. The title for an alpha's mate. The highest-ranking female in the pack. A position she'd never dreamed of holding, never thought she deserved. They'll accept it, Ryder said flatly. Or they'll leave. I won't have anyone in my pack who threatens my family. Cassandra studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You've grown into your power, Ryder Thorne. Your father would be proud. And perhaps. A small smile crossed her ancient face. Perhaps this prophecy will end differently than the others. Perhaps this twice-born will bring something new into the world. Something better. She began to fade, her form growing translucent. I will find you when you reach the sacred grounds. I will teach the boy what he needs to know. But until then, trust no one. The Shadow Fong pack has spies everywhere. Move quickly. Move carefully. And, above all, her white eyes fixed on Marin one last time. Remember that you are not just a rogue anymore. You are an oracle. And that means you have power too. You just need to learn how to use it. And then she was gone. Simply vanished, as if she'd never been there at all. The silence she left behind was deafening. Ryder moved first, pulling out his phone and barking orders. I need a security team in my office now. I need a route plan to the northern forests, multiple contingencies. And I need a pack meeting called for tonight. Everyone. No exceptions. While he was making calls, coordinating logistics with the efficiency of someone who commanded armies, Marin sank down onto the couch, pulling Toby into her lap. He was shaking, overwhelmed by everything that had just happened. Mommy, he whispered. Am I bad? Is it bad that I'm special? Marin's eyes filled with tears. No, baby. No, you're not bad. You're extraordinary. You're everything good and bright and beautiful in this world. She kissed his forehead. "And we're going to keep you safe. I promise." But even as she said the words, even as she held her son close, Maren couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. That the quiet, desperate life they'd been living was over. And something much more dangerous was about to begin. The pack meeting was a disaster. Ryder had called every ranking member of the Silverclaw pack to the tower within 2 hours. Maren stood beside him on the raised platform, Toby tucked behind her legs, and watched as nearly 100 wolves filed into the massive conference hall. Their faces ranged from curious to hostile, and every single one of them stared at her like she was a disease. She didn't belong here. Every instinct screamed it. These wolves wore expensive clothes, carried themselves with the confidence of those who'd never known hunger, never slept in their cars, never wondered if they'd survive another day. And she was standing among them, claiming a place at their alpha's side. Ryder's hand found hers, squeezing once. A reminder. "You're not alone." "Thank you for coming on short notice," Ryder began, his voice carrying effortlessly across the room. "I've called you here to make an announcement that will change the future of this pack." The room went still, expectant. "This is Maren Cole. She is my fated mate. And this," he gestured to Toby, "is my son. My heir. They will be formally acknowledged as part of the Silverclaw pack effective immediately." The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds before it exploded into chaos. "A rogue," someone shouted. "You expect us to accept a rogue as our Luna? Where has she been for 5 years? Why is she only showing up now? How do we even know the child is yours?" The questions came like arrows, sharp and meant to wound. Maren felt Toby press harder against her legs, felt his small body trembling. She wanted to scoop him up and run, but Ryder's hand tightened on hers. "Stay. Fight. Enough." Ryder's voice cracked like thunder, infused with alpha command. The room fell silent instantly, wolves dropping their eyes in automatic submission. "I don't need to explain myself to any of you. Maren is my mate. That is not up for debate." But one wolf didn't drop his eyes. Marcus, Ryder's beta, stepped forward. He was nearly as tall as Ryder, built like a fighter, with scars that told stories of battles won. His face was hard as stone. "With respect, Alpha, this affects all of us. A Luna is not just your mate. She represents this pack. She makes decisions that impact our safety, our alliances, our future." His eyes slid to Maren, cold and assessing. "We know nothing about her. Nothing about her bloodline, her history, her loyalties." "My loyalty is to my son," Maren said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "And to his father. That's all you need to know." Marcus's lip curled. "A rogue's loyalty is worth nothing. Rogues survive by running, by abandoning pack bonds when things get difficult. What happens when the next crisis comes? Will you run again? Take the boy with you." The accusation hung in the air, and Maren felt something hot and furious rise in her chest. "I've been protecting him alone for 5 years while you all lived in safety and luxury. Don't you dare question my loyalty." "Protecting him from what?" Marcus challenged. "Or were you just hiding? Keeping him away from his father, from his birthright, from being murdered?" The words exploded from Maren before she could stop them. "I was protecting him from packs like this one, from wolves who would kill him for what he is." The room went deathly quiet. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "What he is? He's a child. What else would he be?" Maren realized her mistake too late. She'd said too much, revealed too much. But before she could backtrack, Toby stepped out from behind her legs. "I'm special," he said in his small, clear voice. "The old lady said so. She said I'm twice born." The reaction was immediate. Gasps. Whispers. Some wolves actually stepped backward, as if Toby was contagious. Marcus's face went pale. "Twice born. You brought the prophesied child here? To our territory? Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I've claimed what's mine," Ryder said coldly. "My mate. My son. And yes, he carries Oracle blood. Yes, he's the child from the prophecy." which means he's more powerful than any of you, and he will be protected by this pack, or I'll dismantle the pack myself." "You can't be serious," another wolf spoke up, a woman with silver streaking her dark hair. "Elena, the pack's chief strategist. The Twiceborn is a death sentence. Every traditional pack in North America will come for him. For us, we'll be wiped out within a month." "Let them come," Ryder growled. "Easy for you to say when it's not your children in the line of fire." Elena shot back. "We have families, Ryder. Pups. Elderly. You're asking us to risk everything for a rogue and a child who shouldn't exist." Marin felt the words like knives. Shouldn't exist. That's what they thought of Toby. Her beautiful, innocent, extraordinary son. "Then leave," Ryder said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "Anyone who can't accept my family can walk out right now. I won't stop you. But if you stay, if you choose to remain part of the Silverclaw pack, then you accept them. You protect them. You would die for them just as you would for me." The room erupted again. Arguments breaking out in clusters. Some wolves nodding in agreement, others shaking their heads in disgust. The pack was fracturing right before their eyes. And then the windows exploded. Not from magic this time. From bullets. Glass shattered inward as gunfire raked across the conference hall. Wolves dove for cover, screaming, transforming midair. Blood splattered across marble floors. Chaos descended in seconds. Ryder shifted instantly, his wolf form massive and black as midnight. He was moving before Marin could even process what was happening, tackling her and Toby to the ground, covering them with his enormous body. More gunfire. More screaming. Marin could smell blood and fear and the acrid stench of silver bullets designed specifically to kill wolves. "Shadow Fong," Marcus roared, his own wolf form tearing through his clothes. "They found us already." Through the chaos, through the terror, Marin heard Toby crying. Not screaming. Just soft, heartbroken sobs that cut deeper than any bullet. And she realized Cassandra had been right. The moment they'd revealed what Toby was, they'd painted a target on all their backs. The war had begun. The safe house was underground, built into old subway tunnels that had been abandoned decades ago. Ryder had brought them here after the attack, after 12 pack members had been injured and 2 killed. After Marcus had gotten them out alive through a secondary exit while Ryder's security team held off the attackers. Now they sat in the dim light of emergency lanterns, surrounded by cold concrete and the weight of failure. Toby had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from crying, curled up on a makeshift bed in the corner. Marin sat beside him, one hand resting on his small back, feeling each breath like a miracle. Ryder stood across the room, still half covered in blood that wasn't his, talking in low, urgent tones with Marcus. The beta kept gesturing sharply, his face hard with anger and frustration. Whatever he was saying, Ryder didn't like it. Finally, Marcus threw up his hands and walked out, leaving them alone. The silence was suffocating. "He wants me to send you away," Ryder said quietly, not looking at her. "Says it's the only way to protect the pack. Hide you and Toby somewhere remote while we deal with the Shadowfang threat." Marin's stomach twisted. "And what do you want?" "I want," his voice cracked. He turned to face her, and the expression on his face broke her heart. Raw anguish mixed with desperate need. "I want to keep you both safe. I want to turn back time and find you 5 years ago before any of this happened. I want." He crossed the room suddenly, dropping to his knees in front of her. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of leadership pressing down on him. "I failed you," he whispered. "I failed to protect you tonight. People died because I wasn't fast enough, wasn't prepared enough. Because I let my personal feelings cloud my judgment." "Stop." Marin's hand cupped his jaw, forcing him to look at her. "Those people died because the Shadowfang pack are murderers. Not because of you. Not because of us. But if I'd handled the announcement differently, they would have found out eventually. This isn't your fault." Ryder's eyes searched hers, looking for absolution she wasn't sure she could give. I should have found you sooner. Should have protected you from the beginning. You didn't know I existed. The mate bond should have led me to you. But I was so consumed with pack business, with building the company, with proving myself as alpha that he stopped, swallowing hard. I ignored what my wolf was telling me. Ignored the pull. And you suffered for it. Marin had spent 5 years being angry at the universe, at fate, at the cruel joke that had made her fall for an alpha she could never have. But looking at Ryder now, seeing his genuine pain, she realized he'd been suffering too. Just differently. We both made choices, she said softly. I chose to run. You chose to focus on your responsibilities. Neither of us knew what the other was going through. Her thumb brushed across his cheekbone. But we're here now. Together. That has to count for something. Ryder's hand covered hers, pressing it harder against his face like he was afraid she might disappear. I've been half alive for 5 years. Walking through my days like a ghost. And now you're here, and it's like someone turned the lights back on. Like I can finally breathe again. The confession hung between them, intimate and raw. I'm scared, Marin admitted. I've spent so long running, so long being alone, I don't know how to do this. How to trust. How to let someone else carry part of the burden. Then we'll figure it out together. Ryder shifted closer, his forehead resting against hers. I'm not asking you to stop being strong. I'm asking you to let me be strong with you. Let me share the weight instead of carrying it all alone. Marin closed her eyes, breathing in his scent, letting it calm her racing heart. The mate bond thrummed between them, growing stronger with proximity, with honesty, with each moment they chose to be vulnerable. What if I can't do this? She whispered. What if I can't be what a Luna needs to be? What if I fail Toby, or the pack, or you? You won't. His certainty was absolute. You've kept our son alive and healthy for 5 years with nothing but your own strength and love. You're already more than enough. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to let go of the fear that had been her constant companion for so long. The sacred grounds, she said. You really think we can make it? I think Ryder pulled back slightly, his eyes meeting hers. I think if anyone can survive a 3-day journey through hostile territory with the world's most wanted child, it's us. Together. A small smile tugged at Marin's lips despite everything. That's either confidence or insanity. Probably both. His smile matched hers, tired but genuine. The moment stretched between them, warm and fragile and precious. And then Ryder leaned in, his intentions clear in the way his eyes dropped to her lips. Marin met him halfway. The kiss was soft at first. Tentative. 5 years of separation and pain dissolving in the press of lips. But then the mate bond roared to life, demanding more, and the kiss deepened. Became desperate. 5 years of loneliness poured into the connection. 5 years of missing someone they'd barely known but couldn't forget. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ryder rested his forehead against hers again. We leave at dawn, he said quietly. Pack light. Move fast. Trust no one outside our immediate circle. And if we don't make it, we will. His hand found hers, lacing their fingers together. Because I refuse to lose you again. I refuse to let anyone hurt our son. And I refuse to let fear win. Marin looked over at Toby, sleeping peacefully despite everything. Then back at Ryder, this alpha who'd gone from stranger to mate to partner in the span of hours. Okay, she said. Together. Together, he echoed. And for the first time in 5 years, Marin let herself hope. They were 12 hours into the journey when Marcus made his move. The group was small by necessity. Ryder, Marin, Toby, Marcus, and 4 of Ryder's most trusted guards. They'd been traveling through back roads and forest paths, avoiding main highways where Shadowfang scouts might be watching. Everything had been going smoothly. Too smoothly. They'd stopped at an abandoned ranger station to rest and eat. Toby was sitting on Marin's lap, nibbling on a protein bar, when Marcus's phone rang. He stepped outside to take the call. Came back 2 minutes later with an expression that made Marin's instinct scream. We have a problem, Marcus announced. That was my contact in the Northern Territories. Shadow Fong isn't just behind us. They're ahead of us too. They've blocked the main route to the sacred grounds. Ryder cursed under his breath. Alternate routes? 3 options, all risky. But there's one, Marcus hesitated, pulling out a map. There's an old smuggler's path through Blood Moon territory. It's faster, less monitored, but we'd need to negotiate passage. Blood Moon hates my guts, Ryder said flatly. They'd never agree. They might. For the right price. Marcus's eyes slid to Marin. If we offered them something they wanted. The air in the room changed. Ryder went very still, his eyes narrowing. Explain. The Blood Moon Alpha has been looking for an oracle for years. His daughter is sick, dying from a curse no healer can break. If we could promise them access to Marin's gift, they'd let us through. Marin's blood ran cold. You want to trade me? Not trade. Loan. You help his daughter, we get safe passage. Marcus spread his hands like it was reasonable. Everyone wins. Except the part where we split up, Ryder growled. Where Marin and Toby are separated from my protection. It's a few hours at most. She helps the girl, we pick her up on the other side. Marcus's tone was patient, almost condescending. Unless you have a better idea? Ryder stared at the map, jaw clenched. Marin could see him running calculations, weighing risks. Every second they delayed, Shadow Fong got closer. There has to be another way, Ryder said finally. There isn't. Not if we want to reach the sacred grounds before the new moon. Marcus leaned forward. Alpha, I know you don't want to hear this, but we're out of time. Out of options. This is our best shot. One of the guards, a young wolf named Brennan, spoke up. What if it's a trap? What if Marcus's contact is feeding us false information? Marcus's face hardened. I've worked with this contact for years. He's reliable. But something in his tone made Marin's skin crawl. She looked at Ryder and saw the same suspicion in his eyes. Show me the message, Ryder demanded. From your contact. Marcus hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. Show me the damn message, Marcus. The beta's hand moved faster than anyone expected. He pulled a gun from his jacket, aiming it not at Ryder, but at Toby. Everyone froze. I'm sorry, Marcus said, and he actually sounded sincere. But I can't let you do this. Can't let you risk the entire pack for one child. Marin's world narrowed to that gun barrel pointed at her son's head. Her wolf surged forward, ready to tear Marcus apart with her bare hands. Marcus. Ryder's voice was deadly calm. Put the gun down. I can't. The Shadow Fong pack isn't the only one who wants the twice-born dead. Half our own pack wants him gone. And they're right. Marcus's jaw clenched. I've served you for 10 years, Ryder. Been loyal through everything. But this is suicide. You're going to get us all killed for a prophecy and a woman you barely know. She's my mate. She's a rogue, Marcus shouted. And that child is an abomination. The prophecy says he'll either unite or destroy. Why are you gambling that it's the first option? Because he's my son, Ryder said quietly. And I will burn this world down before I let anyone hurt him. Marcus's gun hand trembled. Behind him, the other guards had drawn their own weapons, creating a standoff. 2 were aiming at Marcus. 2 were aiming at Ryder. The pack was truly broken. I called them, Marcus admitted, his voice hollow. Shadow Fong. I told them where we'd be. They're coming, Ryder. They're already here. And when they arrive, I'm handing over the boy. In exchange, they'll leave the rest of the pack alone. Betrayal tasted like ash in Marin's mouth. This wolf, Ryder's second-in-command, his trusted friend, had sold them out. You coward, she whispered. Marcus flinched. I'm a realist. Sometimes you have to sacrifice one to save many. Your mother should have taught you that. The words were meant to hurt, and they did. But they also ignited something in Marin. Something that had been dormant, waiting. Her eyes began to glow. Not gold like Toby's. Silver. Pure, blazing silver that lit up the dim room. My mother, Marin said, her voice echoing with power she didn't understand. "Died protecting me from wolves like you. And I will not let history repeat itself." The temperature dropped. Frost spread across the windows. And Marcus's gun froze solid in his hand, ice cracking up his arm. He screamed, dropping the weapon, staring at Marin like she'd become something monstrous. "Oracle," he breathed. "You're a full oracle." Ryder moved. One moment he was across the room, the next he had Marcus by the throat, lifting him off the ground. His eyes were pure alpha gold, his wolf so close to the surface his face was already shifting. "The guards who stayed loyal," Ryder growled, "restrain those who betrayed us. We'll deal with them later." It happened fast. The two guards who'd aimed at Marcus overpowered the others. Within seconds, half their team was in chains. Ryder dropped Marcus, who collapsed, gasping. "You're coming with us. And when this is over, you'll face pack justice for what you've done." Through the window, Marin saw headlights. Multiple vehicles approaching fast. "They're here," she said. Ryder grabbed Toby, who'd been eerily quiet through the whole confrontation, and looked at Marin. "Can you do that again? That ice thing?" I don't know. I didn't even know I could do it the first time." "Then we run." He turned to the loyal guards. "Brennan, take point. Leah, cover our rear. If anyone follows, you have permission to kill." They burst out the back of the ranger station just as Shadowfang wolves surrounded the front. The chase was on. And as they ran through the dark forest, Toby clinging to Ryder's neck, Marin felt her power stirring again. Waking up. Growing stronger. She was done running. Done hiding. Done being afraid. If they wanted her son, they'd have to go through her. And they'd discover that a mother protecting her child was the most dangerous creature in any world. Oracle blood. Alpha power. And a love that could shatter armies. Let them come. The sacred grounds appeared through the trees like something from a dream. Ancient stone pillars rose from the earth, covered in symbols that glowed faint silver in the moonlight. The air hummed with power so thick Marin could taste it, electric and alive. This was where the first wolves had been blessed, where magic still remembered its own name. They'd been running for 2 days straight, sleeping in shifts, fighting off 3 separate ambushes. Marcus and the traitor guards were long gone, escaped during the second attack. And now Shadowfang forces surrounded the sacred grounds, a wall of wolves and weapons keeping them from the one place that could save them. Ryder had 43 pack members left. Loyal wolves who'd chosen to follow him despite everything. They were outnumbered 3-1. "We'll never make it through," Brennan said, his young face grim as he surveyed the enemy forces. But they had to. The new moon was rising. They had maybe 2 hours before the window closed and the claiming ceremony became impossible. Marin held Toby close, feeling his small heart racing against her chest. He'd been so brave. Too brave for a 4-year-old. He hadn't cried once since they'd started running, just held on tight and trusted them to keep him safe. "Mommy," he whispered, "now I see something." "What do you see, baby?" His golden eyes had gone distant, unfocused. The oracle sight taking over. "Fire. Lots of fire. And you." His voice trembled. "You're glowing. Really bright. Like the sun." Before Marin could respond, a voice boomed across the clearing. "Ryder Thorn." A massive wolf stepped forward from the Shadowfang ranks, shifting mid-stride into human form. He was old, scarred, his face hard as carved granite. "Alpha Donovan, leader of the Shadowfang pack. Send out the abomination and we'll let the rest of you live." "You have my word." "Your word means nothing," Ryder shouted back. He was standing at the edge of the sacred grounds, every muscle coiled and ready. "That child is my son. My heir. And he's under the protection of the Silverclaw pack." "Then you've all chosen death." Donovan raised his hand, and the Shadowfang wolves began to advance. A living wave of fur and fangs and murder. Ryder's wolves shifted, forming a defensive line. So few. So outnumbered. But they stood firm, ready to die for their alpha's family. Maren felt something crack open inside her chest. These wolves, these brave, loyal souls, were about to be slaughtered. For her. For Toby. Because Ryder had chosen them over pack politics and tradition. No. She wouldn't let that happen. Ryder, she said quietly, setting Toby down and pushing him toward Brennan. Take him. Get him to the ceremony circle. Maren, what are you? I'm an oracle. I have power. I just need to figure out how to use it. She met his eyes and saw her own fear reflected there. Get our son to safety. I'll buy you time. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are. Because if we both die, he has no one. She grabbed his face, kissed him hard and fast. Trust me. Please. For a heartbeat, she thought he'd refuse. Thought his alpha instincts would override everything else. But then he nodded once and grabbed Toby. I'm coming back for you, he promised. I know. Maren watched them run toward the ancient pillars, Brennan and 2 other guards flanking them. Then she turned to face the advancing army alone. Silver light exploded from her body. It burst outward in a wave, so bright the wolves had to shield their eyes. Maren felt power rushing through her veins, ancient and wild and absolutely terrifying. This was what her mother had hidden. What the pack had killed her for. The gift that made oracles dangerous. The ability to see not just the future, but to change it. Stop. Her voice echoed with otherworldly resonance. When she spoke, the ground trembled. The Shadow Fang wolves actually halted, caught by the sheer force of her presence. Alpha Donovan snarled. Kill her. Kill the witch. But when they tried to move forward, roots erupted from the earth. Ancient trees, dormant for centuries, came alive at her command. Their branches wrapped around wolves, lifting them into the air. Thorns sharp as daggers sprouted from bark, creating an impenetrable wall. Maren didn't know how she was doing it. The power was moving through her like a river, guided by instinct and desperate love. Behind her, she could hear Ryder chanting the ancient words of the claiming ceremony. Could feel the magic of the sacred grounds responding, recognizing Toby as something precious and rare. You can't stop all of us, Donovan roared, shifting into his massive gray wolf form. Watch me, Maren said. She thrust her hands forward, and the earth itself answered. Pillars of stone erupted beneath Shadow Fang wolves, scattering them. Wind howled through the clearing, carrying ice sharp enough to cut. The temperature plummeted, frost spreading in crystalline patterns across everything. But there were too many. For every wolf she stopped, 3 more took their place. Her power was vast but untrained, raw and uncontrolled. She could feel it burning through her, consuming her from the inside. She was dying, using too much too fast. But if she stopped, they'd reach Toby. So she didn't stop. Blood began to drip from her nose. Her ears. The oracle sight was showing her 1,000 futures simultaneously, all of them collapsing into this single moment. This choice. This sacrifice. Almost there. Ryder's voice reached her through the chaos. Maren, just hold on. She couldn't hold on. Her legs were giving out. Her vision blurring. The silver light flickering like a dying star. And then a small hand slipped into hers. Toby. He'd broken away from Ryder, run back to her side. His golden eyes were blazing with that same otherworldly power. Together, Mommy, he said simply. When their powers merged, the world exploded. Gold and silver light intertwined, spiraling upward in a column that pierced the night sky. The force of it threw wolves backward, sent weapons flying, cracked the earth itself. And in that moment, Maren saw what Toby would become. Saw the man he'd grow into. Saw a future where wolves lived in peace, where power was used to protect instead of destroy. Saw hope. The light faded slowly, gently, leaving absolute silence in its wake. Maren collapsed, but Ryder was there, catching her. Toby curled between them, exhausted but alive. Around them, The Shadowfang forces were retreating, scrambling away from the sacred grounds like the earth itself had rejected them. Alpha Donovan stood at the edge of the clearing, his face pale with something that looked like awe. "The prophecy," he whispered. "It's real. He's real." And then they were gone. Vanishing into the forest, their mission failed, their certainty shattered. Cassandra appeared from nowhere, her white eyes soft with approval. "The claiming is complete. The child is bound to both bloodlines, protected by ancient magic itself." She looked at Marin. "You did well, little oracle. Your mother would be proud." Marin couldn't speak, could barely breathe. But she felt Ryder's arms around her, felt Toby's small body safe between them, and knew they'd won. They'd survived. Together. 3 months later, Marin stood on the balcony of Thorn Tower, watching the sun set over the city. So much had changed. The Silverclaw pack had grown stronger, attracting wolves from all over who wanted to be part of something new. Something better. Marcus and the traders had been exiled, sent away to live as rogues themselves. And Toby. Toby was thriving. He'd started training with Cassandra, learning to control his oracle sight, learning to be both powerful and kind. He had friends now, other wolf pups who didn't care about prophecies or bloodlines, who just wanted to play and laugh and be children. The pack had accepted them. Some reluctantly, some enthusiastically, but they'd accepted them. Marin was their Luna. Not because she was perfect, but because she'd proven she'd die protecting what mattered. Ryder came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Penny for your thoughts?" Marin leaned back against his chest, breathing in that pine and winter frost scent that now meant home. "Just thinking about how different everything is. Different good or different bad?" "Different terrifying," she admitted. "I spent 5 years running. Now I'm supposed to lead. Supposed to be someone people look up to. What if I mess it up? Then we'll fix it together." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "That's what mates do." Through the glass door, Marin could see Toby inside, sitting with a group of pups, showing them something in his coloring book. His laughter carried through the door, bright and pure and completely free. This was what she'd fought for. This moment. This peace. But she knew it wouldn't last forever. There would be more challenges. More enemies. More people who feared what Toby represented and wanted to destroy it. The prophecy was real. Her son was destined for something greater, something that would reshape their entire world. And she would be there, standing beside him, protecting him, teaching him that power without compassion was just cruelty. Ryder's hand found hers, lacing their fingers together. "No regrets?" Marin thought about that broken girl who'd walked into this building months ago. Desperate, terrified, alone. She thought about the moment everything changed, when the Alpha had looked at her son and recognized his own blood. She thought about how close they'd come to losing everything and how love had saved them. "No regrets," she said finally. "Just hope." And as the sun disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and silver, Marin allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, their story would have a happy ending after all. The door to Thorn Enterprises had slammed shut like a death sentence. But sometimes, the end of one story is just the beginning of another. Sometimes, the rejected become the chosen. Sometimes, the broken become the heroes. Would you have chosen her side? Would you have seen the strength hidden beneath the worn clothes and trembling hands? Would you have believed that a rogue Omega and her secret son could change the world? Or would you have feared them like so many others did? The truth is, we're all just one moment away from our lives changing forever. One door slamming. One stranger noticing. One choice that splits the world into before and after. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to give up. If this story ignited something inside you, if you felt Marin's fear and Toby's innocence and Ryder's desperate love, then you know what it means to believe in second chances. In fated bonds. In the kind of love that rewrites destinies. Subscribe to Cindy's Wolfheart Stories. Because here, We don't just tell tales about wolves and magic and impossible love. We tell stories about survival, about mothers who become warriors, about children who carry the weight of prophecy, about finding family in the most unexpected places. Stories that burn, stories that heal, stories that remind you that no matter how broken you feel, no matter how many doors slam in your face, your story isn't over. It's just beginning.